I want to explain how to turn $30,000 into a $300,000 asset. And I'm going to walk through the different steps that it takes to get there. I'll try to be as concise as possible and bring you along in the process as to where I am today. Now, it's going to be three parts to this video. First is just the play overall. How am I bringing together this business venture? Second, I'm going to talk about the financing piece. How do you come up with the bread for it? And then third, I'm going to talk about the construction component of it. Like what actual projects need to get done to turn this $30,000 in cash into a $300,000 renovated home. Now, first is mindset. You have to be someone who is relentless and just a hustler. This is not going to work if you're not a hustler. You got to really be on it. And you actually have to derive some passion from this. Me personally, I was reading this book called Color of Law. And it talked about all of the impediments that were there for black people to acquire property. In many ways, that gave me some passion as I approached this project. But beyond this process has to be this mindset. However you get there, however you focus, whatever gets you going in the morning. So that's the first part. Now I'm going to just talk about the play overall. Many people may have heard of a land bank. And Cook County has its own land bank. A land bank is a government organization that goes and buys property, distressed property, and it puts it into a marketplace and allows for investors, people who are GCs, people who want to renovate homes, people who want to do real estate investing to have acquisition of a property at a low price. I bought it for $40,000. And as you can see, I applied for it, I was awarded it, and then I was under contract for like 3 months. It just took forever to clear all of these different aspects of it. Finally, at the end, it was like something like a final payment certificate for water so that I didn't get stuck with this property's water bills that have accrued in the past. So it was like really things that you had to work through like that. And you got to be on it and willing to pull up to City Hall. So that's how you get it to a place where I'm actually closing on August 31st, right? Now, you can see before then, I already had the permit and everything. That was going parallel pathing. So some of these things just happened in parallel path. And the reason why I was able to close at the end of August is because if you look down to that next one is financing. I actually utilized a HELOC, a home equity line of credit for $40,000 on the condo that I purchased in Chicago back in 2019. I used some of the equity there. And I paid for the property on August 31st. Now, there was another component of it where I needed to come up with a larger sum of money. And that's when private financing came into the picture. Now, if you look at the bottom, you can see that up until, July, I had only spent like $13,000. And some of that was like the architectural drawings and all that stuff. And then I started to actually spend money on demolition. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to transition over to the budget now, just so you can start to see some of the line items. And I'll try to, also incorporate some of the projects that were done. Many of these actually have video content associated with them. But things like the architectural drawings was like $8,000 right off the bat. But you needed that in order to get the permit, right? You needed a land survey as a part of your permit. I had a guy come out early on to do an inspection. Honestly, the mindset that I have now, I would never pay this, just because I know what to look for now, right? Demolition, there was some tools that went along with that, but then it was like the labor component. So now you really getting labor, to come out a few days to actually start to remove a lot of the plaster and lav, some of that old drywall, it was a lot of like wood that needed to come out of there. If it was a non-structural member, that we was taking it out. And then you kind of rented trucks. This was the demolition of the structure in the back. It was like this big, ugly thing in the back that needed to be taken down. The tree, that was something I really didn't account for. It cost $3,000 for them to take the tree down, but that was much needed. the chimney, had to take the chimney out, but I actually got to reuse some of the bricks from the chimney on the side of the wall when I did my masonry. I also had to pay for a structural engineer before I got my carpenter kicked off, because we really wanted to actually know where you needed to add structure to the building. That's when I started to like actually dig footers and actually put, you know, 3 feet of concrete there. And so when the footer or the actual wood post comes down, it can support that weight on this big slab of concrete. Um, and masonry was to make sure that all of the bricks were tuck pointed, removing old ones, tuck pointing new ones. And then I also paid to get lintels put, which is the kind of the support beam that you see sit above windows. I also needed a lintel, and this is a steel beam that carries weight, when I opened up the pathway into the kitchen. Siding, this is when I actually like polled people on Instagram to see what color to go with, but we ripped out all that back part, did all the siding. You know, they did the roof, and this is when I got the windows put in for the skylights. Those skylights that sit on the roof are you know, those windows are called skylights. Electrical, half of this work has been done, right? So I got lights into place. I passed inspection. HVAC, we got everything in place. I just need for People's Gas to run me a new gas line so I can turn the furnace on. But all that stuff is in place. Plumbing, that's a whole nother conversation for another day. Hopefully I got my guy and we can get going. Insulation, this is actually when they were spraying insulation up top so that they could encapsulate that area and provide you know, kind of a barrier against the cold, against the climate up there. And then, you know, these are some of the next projects. I put the windows down here as paid for. All of the ones in green are fully paid for. I guess I could, you know, change these other colors just to kind of highlight which are some of the big line items that I got left. Really, the biggest line item left is to get the rest of the electrical paid and HVAC paid, and plumbing. All of your mechanicals are going to be the most. So that's where I am right now. But let me just kind of get back to the numbers. You know, the rest of these things are things that will happen in the spring and kind of like when you actually putting the home back together. So you got to put the doors in. You got to put paint, right? You got to do cabinets and sinks and vinyl flooring, right? All of those things are kind of like to build the house up after you do this project, which is drywall. Drywall is really the next big milestone I need to get over. Because once you drywall, then it really does look like a crib, and then that's when I'll actually move in, and it'll really kind of turn to an asset at that point. And then the rest of these are like spring projects out in the yard, the concrete. I need to get all that up in the back, but I'll do that when it's nice out in the spring. So what I'm looking at now is an all-in cost of $186,000, right? So what you really have to actually do is that number equals this number plus 20,000, or I'm sorry, 40,000 for the acquisition of the property. I don't know why I'll put that there. So that's my all-in cost. So I'm gonna call this all-in, and then I'm gonna say, you know, in the area, I'm seeing comparables at, let's just call it 300,000. Let's just create the bracket. So I think I'll sell somewhere between 260,000 and 320,000. So that's where you create the asset, right? And that's what I'm saying. I'm creating a $300,000 asset with 30K of my own bread, and then this is equal to this minus this one. So you know, that's your possible profit potential. Boom, minus this one equals that. So you know, anywhere from $33,000 to $93,000 just in like profit. You know, if I was to just sell, right? If I just wanted to sell. But I don't think I'm going to sell. Like, I think I'm going to just chill because the reality is now I have something that I can leverage. So let's just call it $300,000. So the reason why you acquire assets is so that you can leverage them. So what am I going to do now? Well, this is when you put your property to work for you. And if I have a property that appraises at $300,000, then most cash out refis let you take up to 80% of the equity in that home. And the equity is $300,000, right? So I could take up to 240, but let's create a scenario where I take 210,000, which is 70% of the home. I'll leave some of the equity in the property itself. So I have $210,000 in cash. I put it all in of 226, take away 40K of my own money, put that at 186. So the difference between 186 and 210 is 24,000. So that's $24,000 of new cash to put into the down payment on a 3 flat. That would allow for me to rent this property out and have that $210,000 loan paid for by the tenant. And I would cash flow about $400 to $500 a month. And then I would be living in a 3 flat where the down payment was taken care of by the previous property. And this is how you start to create wealth through real estate.